So, what is workflow? Workflow applies to a myriad of fields and industries, but we're going to be addressing it in the context of content creation workflow. Workflow in this graphic's context refers to the specific steps taken to produce a communication piece from content creation to output. In the digital world, it is now really impossible to separate the content creator from the production process as used to be done in the past. So now the content creator needs to understand what it takes to develop an efficient and therefore profitable workflow. Workflow is something that can also be mapped out as a graphical representation of the flow, and we will be looking at that in the next lecture. Workflow, first and foremost, is a plan of action or strategy. It's managing your process, and it is truly a relationship between throughput, productivity, and profit. This makes it not only a technical concern, but also a focus of management. Knowing ahead of time the logical priority of tasks and the most efficient way to accomplish them allows your work to be profitable. The old adage is that the fastest way to give yourself a raise is to do a given amount of work in half the time it normally takes. So the challenge is to understand the technology involved in the creation and production of a given piece or output and the most logical and efficient way for it to happen within the context of a particular business model. So, what is workflow in the bigger sense? It is an organizational process that can be large scale or small scale. It's a flow chart of actions that outlines a process by documenting user interaction, and it's usually, hopefully, driven by logic. It is a series of actions and conditions that have a clear beginning, sequential steps, and an end. In the broadest sense, there are certain types of workflows, and workflows can be manual or automated or a combination of both. Manual workflows are user-initiated, meaning someone has to do something for some reason or to trigger the whole workflow to begin. The start of a process is usually manual because it requires an action by a user. Within a process, a manual workflow adds processing time. It usually takes longer than an automated one. Automated workflows are usually machine-driven by automatically generated steps that monitor, track, and manage a process. They are created to be proactive, not waiting for user initiation. For example, the process of creating a recurring event on an electronic calendar is a combination of manual and automated workflow. The user initiates the process by manually creating the event, setting the reoccurrence, reminder alerts, and saving, and then the process takes over and follows the workflow that has been set up. When we talk about the physical factors of workflow, we're talking about the things that can impede your work on the physical plane. To carry the pipe analogy forward, think of the size of the pipe as being an analog to the equivalent of the capacity of your equipment. For example, the size of your hard drive, your storage, your external backup. When we think of speed, we not only think of the speed at which you work, but the speed of your equipment. How new is your computer? How much RAM, processor speed, your network. Ethernet, is it gigabit Ethernet? How fast can your information move around? Then think output. Where is your creative content going? Is it going to a print project? Is it going to a website, a dynamic website, a static website? Or is it going to a watch, an iPad, a phone? Ultimately, is it going to a tablet or a 50-foot billboard? And then finally, the concept of load balancing, not piling all tasks up in one area where there might be too much stress or break point, both from a literal step-by-step standpoint and your own sanity in working. Basically, keeping yourself and your workflow in balance. When talking about graphic workflows, you have, of course, your overall workflow that follows the entire job from creation to final output. Then you also have the workflow of individual tasks, and we will be discussing that in the next lecture when we talk about process and task mapping. But also, what we have is the situation where overall processes may be similar, but every job is unique. In graphics, you're not creating repeatable widgets. You may follow certain steps when doing a shoot. For example, tether the camera, create a catalog, adjust your exposures, settings, utilize strobes, export your images, etc. But no two shoots are identical. You may follow a certain process when creating your website, such as mapping out the navigation, the pages, creating assets, pulling in content, publishing, etc. But every website itself is unique. So you have the overall workflow, and then you have the unique individual tasks. I just want to stress that graphic creative content creation is not like creating widgets. So, as we will see, graphic workflow is not that different from the concept of a standard business workflow. It's about the best way to create and complete a creative project. So as you can see, the goal of GIT 450-598 Digital Workflow is to explore and understand the production processes of various forms of output. It's about learning to manage your content in a cross-media world, from content creation to project management. Who knows where content's going to be going in the future, but if you understand the overall processes, you can adapt no matter what technology brings your way.